Hi friends. Thanks for all your feedback on the videos. I'm actually getting some really good stuff. So I've been asked to share more thoughts and things regarding Yom HaZikaron and Yom Ha'atzmaut. And I just want to share with you a few things I was thinking. First, I want to quote the national anthem of Israel called Hatikvah. It was written in 1878, and the one that we sing today is much briefer than the original prose. In English, it's as long as deep in the heart the soul of a Jew yearns, and onwards towards the end of the East, an eye still gazes towards Zion. Our hope is not yet lost, the hope of 2,000 years to be a free nation in our land, the land of Zion and Jerusalem. And I want to also just mention how most anthems, like the Star-Spangled Banner and the Internationale and others, discuss battle and conflict, and Hatikvah does not. And it's also a rare anthem that's in a minor key, so it's lyrical and mournful in its melody and can't be marched to. I want to give those insights were from Daniel Gordis from this book, Israel, A Concise History of a Nation Reborn. I highly recommend it. Anyway, I think the point is just to say that there's something special about the land of Israel and the Jewish people. By saying that, I don't mean to say that anybody else isn't special, or that it's some kind of special that no one else can acquire. There's something in the way that Judaism sanctifies life that is very specific to her, and it's something that when you live here infuses your everyday experience. In America, I used to have periods of depressions, and they were like mostly related to hormones and postpartum kind of baby stuff, but a big part of them wasn't sadness, it was this vacuous emptiness that I felt. This sense of nothingness, like a robot, like being numb. And I'm not trying to say it all like that's from America, it's not. That's me, that was me. But that same kind of touching on the abyss and feeling like there's no, branch to hold before plunging into the, cavernous hole. I don't feel that here. And it's not to say my life here has been the easiest. It's probably been the hardest and most complex, more due to my age and life and stuff. The years that I've lived here, this summer it'll be 8 years. And I never got that kind of depressed. I got sad. I got overwhelmed. I had times when it was really hard to cope. But I never felt empty. Which is amazing. My dream was, if I live in Israel, obviously I'll never get depressed because it's magical here. And as it is magical in certain ways, it's extremely grounding and earthy in many others. And because of that earthiness, that quality of authenticity, that raw feelingness that one day drives you insane and the other day makes you high, that I never felt empty or detached from life force for myself. If anything, it really forced me to come way more into myself and face her and love her and now share her. So for Yom HaZikaron, being Olim, kind of a quote luxury of that would be we're a little bit removed from experiencing firsthand, usually having family or friends that have died in wars. I'm sure many people do, but amongst myself and friends in the two different communities I lived in, it's not usually as like right there. And definitely not for me. And something I kind of took on myself when I moved here was sometimes when there's a terrorist attack and someone dies, or a soldier that dies, they'll publicize in the news, in the paper, the shiva, if the family is comfortable or wants or invites makes it public for anyone to come. So ever since I've lived here, if I see that, I go on my own to those shivas, just to be a part of the klal, of the group, and to be supportive, and to show that I'm here, and I'm so grateful beyond words to be here. And I feel so badly for their loss. And I want to just share 2 stories from that experience. One was the shiva of the girl Hallel, who lived in Kiryat Arba, who was around, I think, 12 or 13, and was she was stabbed in her bed. And when I got there were so many people outside their little house that was on the edge of their yeshuv, surrounded by grapevines, fields of grapes. People sitting outside, people waiting online to go into this little house. And it was a super hot day, and nobody left. They just kept coming. When I got inside the house, I saw the mother, and she was talking to everyone. And one of the rules of Shiva is that you're supposed to have people that take care of you, like they give you drinks and they give you food and stuff like that. So you're not exactly you're being served, kind of, but more like people are taking care of you, but more so you don't have to ask, or I guess even think to ask. And she was offering people drinks and cake that people had nicely put out. And she was telling everyone, I want the world to know that my home is a Jewish home, full of happiness. Even in spite of such a tragedy and such a loss. And she had the girl's bedroom open, and you were able to go in and out of the room. And she was just kept saying how she wants everyone to know in the world that her home is a home. It's not a place of murder. Like a murder happened there, a horrible tragedy, but it will not break them. And their home will still be a home where people will eat and drink and be guests. And it was so powerful. It was so beautiful, her strength, holding up her sorrow, her evident and very obvious pain and sorrow. So that's one story. The other one is a story of a girl who passed away in from Tekoa, sorry. She was in the Jerusalem forest, I think about a year and a half ago. I posted her song. I don't know why right now her name, I can't think of her name, but I get nervous giving these over a bit, so excuse me, but she was doing her national service, and she was in the forest by the zoo in Jerusalem, and she was doing kind of like a hitbodedut, like when people walk in the forest and talk to God or whatever. I guess that's what people say. She was on her break, and she was just kind of taking a walk, and a terrorist took her and did horrible things to her and her body, and she died. And she was from Tekoa, and I went out there on my own to the Shiva, and actually the Prime Minister was on his way at that time, so they had kind of locked it down and had Secret Service men everywhere, but it was still packed. Also a beautiful little house with gorgeous views, so tranquil and peaceful. And I was able to get into the house, and her parents just sat there, quiet. And most of the Shiva people were just sitting there quiet, like 50 people in their tiny living room, sitting there in quiet, crying. My heart beat so fast telling the story. And I don't mean to minimize it by making this comparison at all, but it was kind of like the first time I went into a yoga studio, and I went into a studio where, by accident, of a different class, and there were like 30 people in headstands, in silence, in the dark. It was something you could feel in your body, that there's actually an energy of holding and support between the people in the space together, and such a strong focus. In this situation, a focus on memoriam and holding and support and love. And you could see from the face of the parents and the siblings how Adin, like how soft, but not in a weak way, just like soft and refined. The opposite of violent. And yet this woman was like so violently taken from them. And I never got to see the Prime Minister. I heard a few stories that some people shared. But the parents never left their chair. They always stayed there. And everyone who came to just support them with love and presence. And when I was leaving, one of her sisters was crying a lot and seemed really out of sorts. And I just went to her and said how I don't know her or her family, but I'm an Ola, and I get to live here because of the beautiful souls like her sister. And we hugged for like a few minutes, and she cried, and I held her. And it was extremely powerful. I don't even know her sister's name. And interestingly enough, like maybe only a few months ago, I was in Tehran, which is kind of like an emergency room with one of my kids. And I saw her and their whole family, actually. And I felt like I intimately knew them so well, like I should go say hi or something, but I didn't. I didn't bother them at all. But I guess what my point is with these stories is just saying how we're one family, the Jewish people. and the human race, you know? But right, like they say, like chesed, like charity starts at home with your own kids, with your own spouse, how you respect your parents. And we need to start in those most private of places and then sort of let that leak outwards, run outwards towards our communities, our countries. And this is the Jewish people. And the more I think we could practice that in the most personal of places, the more of a far-reaching effect it will have for everybody. We'll live in a totally different world and reality. I just want to close this with saying how now I work in a school in Re'ut, which is next to Modi'in, an excellent school called Moore, with 7th, 8th, and 9th graders teaching English. And being with a mostly Israeli staff, I've made some really nice friends, and I really appreciate all my experiences there. And again, I was in a meeting with the assistant principal, and her son, who's in the army, surprised her and came into the meeting. And she hugged him and gripped him, and they cried, and he was dirty, and it was like, I couldn't stop crying. It was so beautiful. It's like the videos I used to see on Facebook from outside living in New York. But it's real. And my Israeli friends from my work and from my studies post on Facebook all these videos of siblings or spouses, people in the army, surprising them, loving them. And it's like, this is as real as it gets. My oldest kid is 15. In 3 years, he'll be in the army. When we came here, he was terrified of going in the army. Then a few years later, around his bar mitzvah time, he wanted to be in intelligence, and he was studying all the stuff to be in intelligence. Now, he's like, I want to be like a sniper. Hashem Yishmor, God protect us. I don't know what's going to be. But my point is, you're awake here. This is where it's real. This is where it's like, this is life. And you can't escape. There's no escapism. There's no real, shopping. I mean, you have all of that here, but it only goes so far. You can't, do it to such an extent, at least, New York City. And I, by far, have taken advantage of that in New York City. And at first, it's the hardest thing to adjust to, and then it becomes the greatest gem, the greatest treasure. You have these great equalizers. So everyone fights, but it's kind of like that dysfunctional, functional family situation. At least it's on the table. At least there's a dialogue. Because without that, you can't even begin. So, as we move into Yom Ha'atzmaut, I just want to express my deep, deep gratitude for living here, for raising my family here, for going through my hardships here, as well as my highest of the high moments. My mother-in-law, Ayal's mom, Tova, hi, who I love and adore. Don't worry, Ruth Bausk, I love and adore you too, okay? I'll say that a million times. Tova, I know her since I'm 15, and she's influenced me in many beautiful and positive ways. Her father was a Holocaust survivor that lost all of his family and fought for the country here. And her mother was one of the original dancers in the Bat Sheva dance company and half Yemenite. And she grew up on a kibbutz. So that's like all of the Jewish like story from the last 100 years, like in one person. I hope it's okay. I'm sharing this. And she's a very strong and brave woman who has surmounted a lot and made a real success of her life. And when I had my depressions in New York, after having babies or whatever, she used to always come visit me and help me do things, not just sit in bed and be depressed, but like, come on, Charlotte, let's organize the clothes. Let's do this. Let's do that. Action, action, you know? And it got me moving and doing. And whenever she left me, she used to say, Chazak v'amatz. Be strong and be brave. And that's what they used to say to her when she was in the army. And I was like, I want that. I want that. Anyway, to us all in our personal and our global lives, Chazak v'amatz. May we know better times, and may we celebrate. May we celebrate so we reach a point that we can have celebrations without having to remember the losses, because everything will be whole. Lots of love.